how the figure got to this point, and then again what might happen. And so, the answer to the question of will he catch the ball is kind of like exactly what I'm trying to describe. I want you to sort of wonder like what the next moment is after the sculpture. And so, I often do a lot of works of dancers, and if you go on my website, you'll see I do all kinds of dancers. And my favorite dancer to make is actually when a dancer is standing on one leg, because they're sort of like leaping into the air, and it's kind of that split second that's halfway between going up and coming down. And that split second between those two actions is kind of like a frozen moment in time. And it's right in that pocket where I want my sculptures to live, where they're kind of like, a moment frozen in time that's halfway between going up and coming down. So, that question actually is great because it's exactly like where I want to try to put the sculpture. And so I don't know if he catches the ball or not. That's like part of the fun, is that I don't care whether he catches it or doesn't catch it. But like this is kind of the moment that, it most intrigues me. So hopefully that was not the answer probably you wanted, but you can decide if he catches it or not. Okay, let's keep going here. I'll finish these other two. I think we've got enough time here. So as I'm bending these, I'm also thinking about, the anatomy of the body part that I'm working on. And so obviously I'm working on fingers here. And so as I'm bending these, I'm sort of thinking of the three parts of a finger, and then the way that the digit, separates into three different units. And I'm kind of bending, and then there's a break, and I'm bending, and then there's a break. And so, the anatomy that I have spent years kind of perfecting, and that I spent years drawing at the Art Students League, all that anatomical information that I gleaned from actually studying and drawing, live models, it's actually constantly going through my head as I'm making and bending these things. I'm always thinking about which body part I'm working on and sort of the different parts that go into it. And the way that I learned to draw the figure was really like a series of building blocks that all come together to make a whole figure. And so you think of like, the skull, the face mask, the shoulders, and then it all gets broken down into much smaller, more manageable parts that end up all coming together to make a, human figure at the end. Pinky here, we'll finish this up. So this, I think, gives you sort of a window into what happens, as I'm making these things. And this process that you're watching, where I'm just kind of bending, measuring, cutting, welding, that's really the core of how this all goes. One rod at a time. Like I said, there's no machine stamping out parts. They're all, as you can see, each rod probably gets bent about, 3 or 4 times before I get it exactly right. So, if you kind of, well, sometimes they go a little better. That one only needed 2 rounds. But you can imagine over the course of a whole entire figure how much of this process goes on. So I made 4 fingers. You know, you can sort of see the thickness of them. You can see the character of them. You know, you get a feel for, you know, the fact that they're kind of alive and moving and, you know, just waiting to kind of, you know, catch that football, or maybe it just slips past them. I don't know. But I think that's pretty much all I'm going to do today. But I really appreciate you taking the time to come by here and to hear me talk and to watch what I do. And if there's any other questions, I can answer them before we go.
So is this sculpture going to be installed at the Football Hall of Fame in Ohio?
The question was, where is this sculpture going to be installed? I'm actually at a point right now where I can't really reveal exactly where it's going to be going. Part of the challenge that I have had to overcome with making a 30-foot tall monumental sculpture that is so cantilevered is there's an incredible amount of sort of engineering and construction that has to go into this that is more than what I'm normally used to. And the reason for that is because it's so cantilevered. You know, I designed this thing because I wanted it to sort of be hanging over the viewer and to describe that body like, you know, falling to the ground. And so that has basically involved a lot of engineers, structural steel fabricators, building departments, architects. And so I've actually spent the last like 2 to 3 months, you know, going through the process of getting this thing kind of approved and safe to be installed in the public realm. Obviously, I'm working on it. I'm making the pieces that are going to describe the figure. And so, you know, stay tuned for where it's going. It is going into a great, incredible place. And it's for a big organization, and I'm really excited about it. But right now, we're just waiting for all the final approvals before I can really kind of announce where it goes. So thank you for asking, but stay tuned, and you might be on the right track. So anything else?
Yeah. So since this is such a physical process, how do you stay in shape, and have you ever been hurt?
Have I ever been hurt making these? My back is a wreck. That's part of the reason that I have that rebar shear. Like I said, I used to use this bolt cutter, and I was like, the stuff is so big and heavy that I would have to be like, you know, jumping on this bolt cutter to cut it. So yeah, no, it has definitely taken its toll. I mean, I have had lots of instances where I've thrown my back out lifting something that's too heavy. The biggest problem is that they are so awkward, you know, like I build these big figures in all these crazy positions, and you know, they don't really want to like, you know, go in just one direction. They usually want to go in like 3 or 4. And so often when I'm working on something, it's like, you know, really heavy and falling over. And the awkwardness has been actually more difficult than the physical weight of most of them. And, you know, I'll try to move something and sort of throw my back out. And yeah, I mean, I'm constantly, you know, like, I don't know if it's still there, but, you know, no, it's actually healed. But, you know, last week, like the hot metal wire from the welder, when I'm done welding, this thing is still red hot, and it went like right in and almost through my finger the other day. And so I'm constantly like burning myself, cutting myself, you know, touching a grinder to my knuckle and like taking off a quarter of skin. But thank goodness I have never been very seriously hurt. It's just been sort of like, you know, mild tetanus shot type hurt stuff. So is that the last one?
Final question.
Okay, final question. Thank you all for tuning in. I will try to do my best on the last question.
So, how do you get your commissions? Do you seek them out, or does your reputation generate the business?
So the question is, how do I get my commissions, or does my reputation generate the business? I spend a lot of time applying for commissions and applying for shows and sending applications and sending calls for entries. And, you know, basically what that consists of is either sending some drawings of a sculpture that I want to make, or more often than not for me, I send photographs of a sculpture that I am in the process of making or have already made. You know, generally I try to make and I want to make things that excite me. And so basically, you know, I have this innate need to like get what's in my head out into the real world and then stand back and kind of look at it. And so, you know, I basically make what I want to see. And then I apply to city governments and public art shows and sculpture parks and galleries. And, I basically send photographs of sculptures, for calls for entries. And so, probably like 75% of the work I do is basically through that process where I'm entering calls for, work, or I'm entering competitions, or I'm doing that kind of stuff. Probably the rest of, the other 25% is often, people will contact me and have an idea for a sculpture. They'll say, we want a, dancer, and then I'll come up with the pose and sort of, do that. But, they sort of come to me and say they wanted a dancer. So I would say it's basically, 75 making what I have a desire to make, and then 25%, working directly and making things for people that are commissioning work. And, so if any of you out there want to commission a work, you can find me on my website at steelstatue.com. Send me an email. I'd be happy to talk to you about a commission. There's also, as I said, some great sculptures for sale on my website, small tabletop sculptures that you can just click and buy, and they'll be shipped to your house. There's also some t-shirts, and I think there's some prints on there of some sculptures that I made. So check out my website, check out my Instagram. Thank you for tuning in. This has been really exciting for me. Please continue to ask questions in the comments. I will definitely go back to them when we're done and try to answer as many as I can. I've enjoyed the questions that you've already asked me, and happy International Sculpture Day. Thank you for coming. And I think I'll probably do this again at some point. This was a lot of fun. So tune in again, and keep your ears on my social media channels, and you'll find out where this thing's going, hopefully in the next couple of months. So have a great day. Thank you very much. Bye.